Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Indies Introduced series, where we spotlight debut authors handpicked by booksellers from around the country. In each episode, a bookseller from the Indies Introduced panel will interview the author of a debut title featured in our program.
Hello, everyone. This is Mary Taris coming to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm the owner of Strive Bookstore, which is located in downtown Minneapolis. I have the pleasure and honor today of interviewing Donyae Coles, who is the author of Midnight Rooms. And this was a book that I was so happy and excited to read for Indies Introduce. Donyae, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Donyae Coles is an artist and a writer whose work is speculative in nature. She's been published in Fantasy Magazine, The Root, Pseudopod, and other publications. As a visual artist, she works in traditional media, mainly watercolor, acrylic, and ink. Donyae, I would like to welcome you to this interview, and I'm so excited to ask you some specific questions and learn more about you.
Yay, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk to me.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. So, wow, I know when I talked to you on the phone, I couldn't believe, first of all, when I read the book, I couldn't believe I could see myself in a work of Gothic thriller, historic Gothic thriller. It was just so amazing to read and just, feel connected to something like that. And that leads me to my first question. What made you want to write in the genre of historic Gothic thriller?
Well, I really just wanted to write a story about a Black girl in a big dress. I had read them. I grew up, reading Anne Rice and, Daphne du Maurier, and so I read all these books, and it's always white girls and women running down the halls in their nice big dresses. So I was like, I want to be in one. I want to have that moment of pulling up my skirts and dashing down the hall away from terror. So that desire is really where it started to be kind of seen in that historical place, because people of color were there historically. We didn't just get invented in the 90s, right? There were Black people in England. There were Black people in Europe. There was Black people in, continental America who were doing things that wasn't just working in filth. So, I wanted to sort of tell a story that happened in that space because I really wanted to have those trappings of that history, of the aesthetic of that history, and be seen in that way. So that's really what inspired me to start working on this sort of this in the space of Gothic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what was cool for me, was to be able to see a Black girl in that place and time. Because like you mentioned, a lot of times we're just captured in terms of, who we, who Black people were in terms of slavery. And especially if you're looking at a historic piece, it's kind of sad that we don't get to see more personality and more experiences in terms of what our people have done and can do. So yeah, that was exciting for me to see. And especially since Arabella is of mixed race, her mother being Black and her father being white, that, I'm a biracial as well. So it was just really a personal, affirmation for me. We all know that there isn't that much representation for Black folks in literature, or at least the mainstream literature. So it was just really affirming for me to see, not only a Black girl, but a mixed race or biracial Black girl. So thank you for writing that. It's not very often. Yeah, it's just very often we can see ourselves in great literature. So my next question for you is, how did you develop Orabella and her personality? I really love her.
So when I was writing the book and I was creating the character, and when I started writing, I really didn't know like exactly what genre I was going to be writing at that time because I had started it before Mexican Gothic came out. So at the time that I was drafting this book, nobody was really buying Gothic novels. So I had to kind of think about like, where is this probably going to sell? And I was like, it's probably going to sell in romance if it sells anywhere. So, I was thinking about it in terms of that. And I by the way, I knew like at chapter like 10, I was like, I'm not writing a romance. That was incorrect. So, but when I was working on the character, I I read a lot and I'm very cognizant of like how the characters in these how modern characters in these sort of like terrifying situations always are like, oh, she's not like other girls, she's gutsy and tough. But I also felt like we see a lot of gutsy, tough Black girls, and I really wanted to kind of create someone who stands in for like the softer Black girls, like the girls who are like not for these streets. I wanted to create a soft character who wasn't weak, who wasn't, silly, just soft. And so that's really what I kept in mind for Orabella when I was creating her, someone who is very high femme, very conscientious of her place in the order of the world that she lives in, and like uses that knowledge to survive. And while I was crafting her, so I have ADHD. I'm neurodivergent. I have ADHD. I did not know that when I was writing this book. Oh. So like I was crafting this character that I would have liked to have seen when I was younger, who is making decisions. Now she makes different decisions than me, but was making decisions from this place that I could understand intuitively. And so that's how I ended up crafting her. And that's why I'm like so clear about like, yeah, she does have memory problems. She doesn't remember everything that happens. She is aware that she is a Black woman inside of this space, but like also is trying desperately to still sort of fit into this space because she knows this is how she has to survive. So those are the things that I took into like creating this character. And as the story was going, as I was moving forward in the story, it just became really important to me that she retains that softness, that nothing that happens to her destroys who she is in this process, that she may come out wiser and have, a little bit more worldly, but that she still retains that inner core of like who she is as a person.
Right. Yeah. And her inner core reminds me of just how throughout the book you expressed her inner thoughts, so it was like so relatable because we could see what she was thinking, and the fears she had and, what courage it took for her to do certain things in the book. So I was really impressed with that. So I was going to ask you, do you have any personal connections with any of the characters and family dynamics? And it sounds like you have some connections with Orabella. If you want to expand on that or maybe talk about other connections you have, I'd love to hear it.
So yeah, like both of my parents are Black. I am not mixed race. I do have a mixed race child though. His father is not some like crazy like backwoods like rich person. He's just a normal man. Okay. But no, like when I put some of myself, of course, in Orabella, and I think that's the thing that like a lot of authors end up doing anyway, is that we do kind of write a little bit of ourselves into our characters. But I don't think she's a one-to-one representation of me. She's a lot braver than I am, for one, because I definitely would have just given up. I would day one. I'm like, oh my, I can't handle it. So
yeah, I would have been trying to run away every day.
Yeah, Yeah, that whole thing. I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm not doing this. Um, so, but like, so there's that. And I also think that like I used a lot of my experiences, just kind of growing up as a person of color in areas where I was one of the only or one of the few people of color
Right.
within that, because I think that does shape some of that like worldview, and like how you operate in those spaces. So, that's the kind of experience that I drew on, and also the experience of being neurodivergent, unwittingly, being neurodivergent, and just kind of parse the social interactions of the people around you, and looking at something and going, is this normal? Does this feel normal? Can I even trust my own feelings about things when everyone else seems to be having a great time, and I'm the person who's like, I don't know if this is right. So those are the kind of experiences that I used in the work. This kind of like her isolation was something that like I drew from my own experiences, because again, like growing up out as an outsider, there's a lot of isolation there, so I used those experiences. But so those are the things that I kind of like really put into the book, as opposed to marrying into a wild backwoods family.
Very interesting. So, I'm interested to know what kind of historic research you did in writing this book.
I actually did very, very little.
Wow.
One, England's not a real place. There's no reason to research it. No, obviously England's a real place. But no, I did. It's actually really funny when I was working on the book, like before, I met my agent and did that whole thing. But when I was actually drafting the book, there was, I don't remember this author's name, but there was this author who had gotten into trouble for copy and pasting a section out of a Legend of Zelda wiki
Oh,
and
wow.
putting it into the book, because he needed to know, he was writing about like ancient Sumer or something,
Mm,
and he needed to know the recipe for something. And so he just Googled it, and he
mm,
just copy and pasted like it's like monsters from the video game, and it made it all the way to print, which is why
wow.
people knew about it. So Haley Piper had posted about this incident, and I on Twitter, and I was talking to her, and I was like, like I'm out here being really like nervous about getting something historically wrong in my book, and this man is talking about Octorok eyeballs in a fully published novel. And she was like, don't worry about it, just write your book, like you can have all the Octorok eyeballs you want. It's like, you know what, you right.
Yeah.
So like from that point, I realized it's like, I'm not writing this book to be a history lesson. I'm
Hmm.
not creating this novel so that you guys can come in and like learn everything there is to know about Victorian England. It does not matter. What I am writing is to mess you up. I am writing a book to entertain you and unnerve you and immerse you in this like horror world that I've created. And if
Uh-huh.
I'm doing that, then that was my job. So the most I did was very like surface level, like what did the dresses actually look like? Because I
Mm,
wanted to write about the dresses. So, what did the dresses actually look like? What are the colors that they're using in this time period? And I think I like looked up oil lamps. Like, is it actually feasible to carry an oil lamp? Yeah, I saw Enola Holmes do it, but that was on Netflix. So like, so it was like stuff like that like I really looked into. But other than that, and carriages, like what does a carriage look like? But other than that, I was like, if you're reading this book and you're really concerned about like me getting something historically inaccurate, then I have not done my job. You should be that should be so far from your mind
right.
that
Yeah,
you
it was like another world that you describe in the book. So I was really impressed with your world building. Like, um, it felt like I was there, and your imagination is just incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I worked I I really worked to do that, to really like put the people there in that moment. But I will say this, I picked the time period and I picked the place based on the concept that I cannot break your immersion. And I knew if I tried to be like, it's the 1840s and this Black woman has married into this wealthy family of like weirdos, then people would immediately be like, there's no way that this could happen in America, because like it would have. So, you know, that I was very cognizant of that, and like that piece of like understanding like this is historically the perceptions people have of place is important. I got to place this somewhere where readers who know nothing about history will be able to buy that, like, this is a thing that could happen, as opposed to like just being like, we're Americans, because they're absolutely immediately would be like, no, absolutely not. This never happened. This could never happen. You have to explain too much to make this work.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So that's why you chose England.
That's why we chose England over America.
Oh, that's good to know. Now, I want to talk about the cover because it's so beautiful and it just draws you in. I didn't do any kind of research on the cover. I know you're an artist. Did you do this cover?
I didn't, and it's so funny because so many people ask me that. Like, people, at first I thought people were just being nice. Like, people were just like, oh yeah, but like people were coming up with receipts like, yeah, this looks like your work that you did here. And I was like, okay, interesting. But I did not do the cover. That is by an artist named Marco Mazzani. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. I'm so sorry if I'm not. He's an Italian colored pencil artist. And he drew that whole thing. It's really funny about him though, because I had actually taken a class. He has a Domestika course, which is a website like Skillshare that you can like get like courses in. And he has one, and I had taken it at the start of the pandemic. It popped up, and I was like, I really love this. And so I took this class. So I've talked to him. He's seen, like, I've done art, and he's seen it. He probably does not remember, because I was one of, thousands of students. It was a very popular class. And he was very nice, super nice guy. And I actually sold the painting, or the piece of art that I did for that class. I sold it like, to a private collector. And then fast forward, we're putting together, who's going to do your cover. And I had suggested all these artists that I really like. And I was like, something like this or this, and then the art director came back with an artist. I was like, I don't want that. And I wrote like a dissertation about why no. And he came out with another one, and he got like another really long email from me. And then he was like, okay. So then he comes back with this list of artists, and like a bunch of them were really good people that I was fans of. And then, but the like first name on the list was Marco, and I was like, that's the one. He can do whatever he wants.
Wow.
Whatever cover he sends back, like, that's fine. I already love it. He's the one. And then he did my cover. And I follow him on Facebook. So like he had posted this like really cryptic post about how he was working on something big. And it was like at the time that my cover was in production. And I was like, I don't know if this is my cover, but I hope it is. So I love it. I am fangirling. I am so excited. Like, this artist I adore is the person they chose.
That's so cool that you have a connection with him, or you had a connection prior to them even suggesting him for your cover.
Yeah, like I would not even have known, like I would not have known at all that like years after that he would be the one.
So amazing. Must have been meant to be.
That's how I felt about it. I was like, this was kismet.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I wish the listeners could see the cover. It's just so beautiful. Y'all got to go out and get this book, Midnight Rooms by Donyae Coles. It's amazing. Am I
Yeah,
fangirling right now?
fangirl harder. Yeah, I love it. The cover came out absolutely beautiful, beyond my wildest imaginations. I was just like,
Yeah,
this
and
is
it really represents the story. I mean, you can't really by looking at the cover and reading the back, it sounds like an amazing story, right? But then once you start reading it, it's just incredible. Like, how do you come up with these things? I am just so impressed with your imagination and how you set that world up and built those characters. It's just it was a joy to read and also very thrilling. Like I said, if I were that character, I would be running out of there.
most definitely. I would be like, you know what? I'm done with this. I am walking back home.
Right? Yeah, Arabella
I'm
is
walking to the closest nunnery.
yeah, she's just amazing though. Like you said, she's very brave. I don't know how she did it, but you wrote her to handle things and to get through and wow, I don't want to say too much about the book because you have to be surprised like I was with every chapter.
Yeah, that's the hard thing about talking about it, because it's like, I don't want to spoil anything. I want you to have these experiences
Right.
firsthand.
Yes. One question I kind of want to ask, but I know people ask you this all the time, but what is your favorite part of your book?
Actually, no one asked me about that, but I do know
Oh,
what my favorite part of the book is. Um, so my favorite part of the book, the part where I was like, yes, I put my whole foot in this one, was that graveyard scene. See, you know what's talking about, that
mhm.
graveyard scene where, where it is Arabella and Elias, and she kind of sees who he is, really sees who he is for that
Mhm.
first time, and she realizes like, oh, I'm in danger.
Yeah.
Like, I love that scene because it's the setting just low key mirror like what is happening in her psyche in regards to this relationship that she's in, because it is a relationship
Right.
that she has found herself in, that she become
Mhm.
trapped in. I just, so that is like my favorite scene, and then just like that is like the best characterization of Elias, and like for that one moment that like, oh, this is the truth of who he is
Right.
as a person, and in her having to like, in that one moment,
Mm.
decide how she's going to handle this, and
Yeah.
like she commit to whatever course of action she has, because this is the only moment she's going to have to make this choice, because after this it's all downhill. That is my
Wow.
favorite scene. That's my favorite
Yeah.
scene.
I can see why. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, wow. Well, it's been a joy talking to you about your work and are you thinking about like a sequel maybe?
Um, Not a sequel, but I was considering writing a prequel, um,
Ah.
to kind of dive more into this family, this house, maybe some of the building blocks that got us here, why Elias looked at Orabella and said, that's my future wife.
Mhm.
That's
Oh
the woman.
man.
What led there, because that seems like a strange pick, like on the
Yeah.
outside. It's like you've got this family that looks like what they look like, and they're gonna pick
Hmm.
that girl and be like, that's the one.
Right.
So I am thinking about a sequel for that. I am also working on another gothic horror novel, that takes place in a different time period, in a different location with different people, but same universe. So
Oh. Oh, I can't wait. I'm going to keep my eyes peeled for you and your future works, and I will definitely be carrying your book in my bookstore.
yay!
Thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure talking with you, getting to know you better, and learning more about your work.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoyed talking to you. This has been really lovely. I'm so excited. And yeah, it's just been great.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA website at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!